welcome to another live stream with Paige. Tonight we're going to be painting one of my favorite subjects, and I'll bring that bad boy up here. Maybe, if my computer will work. There we go. My favorite subject is donuts. That's right. Donuts are really fun to paint because they are colorful and you can just taste them. If you are painting them, you can just see them. So tonight we're going to have a little bit of fun and paint some donuts. If you're in here with me, go ahead and let me know you're here in the chat box below. I've been having a ton of problems with YouTube lately. They've changed some things on their end, and I just want to make sure that you can hear me and you can see me, and we're rolling. First and foremost, one of the things that you need to know is that I have downloads this week, and you can access them in a couple different places. I can't actually type into chat because of issues with YouTube, so I can't put those links here for you, but you can go into the description below. There should be 2 links below this image if you're sitting in YouTube or a YouTube app that you can download the reference image, and you can also download that sketch. So I'm going to pull these up for you so you know what you're looking for. Maybe. Come on, computer. That is not what we want. You can tell I'm getting older because I have to really squinch to see stuff. Okay, so this is a tracing. You can trace this. You can transfer it using pencil on the back side of the paper. You'll just have to download that and print it out on your printer. I'm going to be drawing tonight, so we're going to have plenty of time for you to go ahead and print it and trace it if that's what you'd like to do. This is a complex drawing, so this class is going to be a little bit longer than our average class. And you're also going to be looking for a reference photo. And it is this photo, and this is one of my photos. So when you're painting, I always recommend having a camera or your phone ready and taking pictures of things that you see that you'd like to paint. I'm always taking pictures of flowers and those kinds of things. So if you want to, if you're looking for subject matter to paint, don't be afraid to use things that you have at your disposal, whether it's food or objects or nature. So go ahead and look at that down below in the description below, and you can access both those. Also, if you're tuning in from the Pocatello Art Center, this week I've accessed and put those links in that description at the Pocatello Art Center in the online class area. So I just put it up there maybe an hour and a half ago. So if you've accessed it earlier, it's there now. Go ahead and grab it there. Okay. If you're new here, my name is Paige, and I'm the Chief Pixel Pusher and Paintbrusher over at Gumption, and I love doing these classes to help you approach art and not be intimidated by it. So we just have fun in this class. I just kind of help guide you through it, and you paint along with me. Hey Colin, I see that you're in here with me tonight. I see you type something in the chat box, but I'm not sure what that means. So you go ahead and let me know if you have some questions there. I'm going to pop out of the screen and maybe take down that image. Okay. All right, so we're going to go into our supplies screen here, and I'm going to talk to you about the supplies that I'm using. If you're new here, I just kind of tell you what I'm using. You don't have to have these exact colors. Anything close will do. So tonight I'm using a variety of paints tonight, but I'm using a sap green color. I'm using a cobalt teal sodalite, which is a dark gray, or what looks like Payne's gray. I'm also using a red fall sugar maple. If you have a rose color, a red color, a magenta color, these are all fine. You don't have to have these exact colors. I'm also going to be using bread color, which I don't actually have on my palette at the moment. That's made by Beam, and it's really just an apricot color, or you could take orange and dilute that down. And I'm using some purple and some brown. So I have some brown paint that I have made. If you have Van Dyke brown or sepia or neutral tint, any of those will do. Any kind of brown will do. This is just for the icing. So without further ado, I think we can start drawing. Real quickly, I think I am going to snag my bread color. So we'll get to drawing here right now. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to snag that color really quick. It's just across my office. This is actually a Beam color, and this is what it looks like. It's really light color. And again, if you want to go ahead and access that sketch for download, you can do it now. You're going to have plenty of time because I'm going to be drawing this out. And I'm going to kind of loosely be using this and my reference image for this. So first I'm going to draw this shape the best of my ability to do an oval. And if you've been in any of my classes, you know ovals don't look like eyes. They're rounded at the side. Okay. And just do the best you can. This is a pretty complex drawing, and that's why, if you want to trace it, you certainly can. You don't have to be perfect. We're here to have fun. And my oval in my example, I did the best that I could. I'm so used to using the computer to do ovals anymore. So I'm using a 2B pencil with a light touch. You don't want to really be too forceful with your pencil lead. And I'm using a kneaded eraser. These are gentle on paper, and once you use a kneaded eraser, you kind of really love it. How's that oval look? It's a little off, but that's okay. Straighten out this little. Okay, and then we have this mass of this donut. So I kind of look at where it is placed on, I'm going to use both of these, kind of look at where it's placed and some of the negative space here. It's kind of an off oval shape itself. And if you have any questions as we start, go ahead and let me know. In the comments below if you've been working on anything and run into any issues. So I'm looking kind of to see where this frosting ends and how much that space is between the bottom of the donut and where this begins. Just kind of sighting things in, and as you get more used to drawing, these are things that you are used to doing. Frosting is really kind of tricky because it's got some different kind of planes that you're dealing with as well. So I'm just going to kind of draw in this. Let's see if I can get better light here. No. Draw in this shape here. Kind of erase out this area. Colin, since you're hanging out with me right now, I'll let you know that I uploaded a new video into Patreon for you that covers moving the bead and also gradients. So look for that in Patreon. Okay. So you can see, like, here's an edge here, and here's an edge here, and here's an edge here, and then you've got this line here. So frosting can definitely be tricky, and you can easily kind of get off track. Let me bring this here. But I thought, since we're all here, going to be here tonight, I could sketch it along with you. So if you have been in any of my past watercolor classes, this might look familiar to you. It is an assignment that I did have my class do, and we picked a couple donuts to draw. I would definitely expect this class to last a little bit longer. But this is a good opportunity for you to let me know if there are some classes that you would like to see coming up. So this guy kind of moves around here. There's an edge here. And you don't have to put in all the sprinkles. Obviously on this one I didn't do all of these sprinkles. I just kind of sketched them in there. Okay, so we've got this edge, this edge, this edge, this edge. And the icing is definitely the trickiest part. Just try to keep track of your edges, and if you don't and you kind of lose your way, that's just fine. Kind of helps to go along the edge here and sketch that out too. This is sort of rounded here in the corner. And I don't know if you're aware, I just learned that it is World Watercolor Month. So you're probably seeing lots of stuff on the web where people are doing prompts right now and celebrating watercolor. So here on top I'm just going to kind of toss in these little sprinkles. They sit on little ledges, just enough to really kind of give this color. Again, if you're tuning in a little bit later with us right now, you can go ahead and go to the description below this video if you're tuning in via YouTube. And in the description are two links, one for a reference image, which is this image, and one that is for a sketch if you want to trace this. You can do that. You don't have to draw along with me. I know I have some folks who don't print these out. They like to draw along, or they're able to draw along. Okay. Need a few more sprinkles. And you can even add some of these later if you like. You want to make sure to get the sprinkles that are, or some sprinkles that are down here in the brown chocolate icing. And if you're just tuning in, go ahead and let me know you're here in the comments below. I can't actually comment and chat right now, but I'd love for you to be able to. Hopefully you can. Okay, so I'm going to define this area where the chocolate is a little bit better for myself so I can kind of see what I'm doing here. Okay. So in 2015, I gave myself a project where I did a painting a day for a year. And every month was broken up into different kinds of categories. And I think January is all about sweets, and so I did so many donuts, painted so many donuts, and so much so that I was able to do a show when Guru Donuts in Boise opened their first location. They had their grand opening, and they invited me to share my paintings and be there with my paintings. And that was pretty fun. You kind of never know where art is going to take you. All right, so this is good enough for me. So I've got my sketch here. I am going to take my kneaded eraser and I'm going to kind of lighten some of these areas. So shift things around here a little bit. And what I do is I take my kneaded eraser and I just kind of tap. Don't want to take it away so much that you can't see what you drew, but you may not want all of your lead showing through. And because this is a really light pink, that might be another reason you wouldn't want it showing through. Okay, so now we need to get to mixing a little bit of paint. This is my brown that I made. If you have a sepia or other kind of brown, you may want to get some of that wet. We will be using Cobalt Teal and a pink or a rose color. I'm actually going to move this out of our picture frame and mix in these little mixing cups. Okay, so I'm mixing my teal. I'm going to mix up a little bit of pink too, just to get things rolling. That's kind of looking a little more like purple. Gotta rinse your brush off. And we will be using a purple as well, so I've got those two colors. And I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow. This is going to be a little Hansa yellow. You can see here I'm going to use quite a bit of water to dilute this one out to start with. And then I'm going to mix my bread color. So this is an apricot color. This is actually a beam paint, so this is a handmade paint. And sometimes with these handmade paints, you gotta have the water sit in there for a little bit. But we'll try to get some out here. Okay, and I'm just using this brush for mixing. This is a little big for my area that I'm gonna paint. Okay, so now that that is done, let's move in with our Cobalt Teal. And I'm going to use this number 6 brush. It's a round brush with a pointy tip. Kind of shift things around here. So first I'm going to do the plate that we're working on. And because this brush has this nice tip, we can really kind of get into some of these spots here that are narrow. And then I can widen out those bristles and bring that paint down. And I'm moving this bead of water. You can see where it looks a little more concentrated. And I'm going to move that around the edge of this plate. I've got a little divot here. This is probably one of my favorite watercolor colors right now, is this Cobalt Teal. It's just really striking. Just keep moving that bead. What that does for you is it creates this smooth transition all the way around. So you don't get marks in your paint. And I got a little bit in my donut, but that's okay. Whoops. Gonna just try to clean up that edge just a hair. Okay, so that's good enough for me. And we'll let that kind of dry a little bit. I usually do this round robin thing where I'm working in one area and then I start working in another, but I've got some wet paper here and I'm not going to be able to round robin it. So I'm going to dry this really quick. So if you're able to work along with me, you just keep working. I'm going to put my mute my mic here and just dry this really quick and then we can move forward. Now, I don't know if you noticed or not, but, and maybe if you've been in some of my other classes, you've seen this. I have a diffuser on my hair dryer because I have curly hair, but also it's a great tool to dry your paintings with because it doesn't blast air. It diffuses the air and allows it to dry more evenly. So that's one thing to note. If you have curly hair too, use your diffuser. Okay, so I'm going to start with the bread portion of this guy. So I'm going to start with this light yellow color, and I'll show the camera here. This is the color that we're going to use. And I'm going to just do this bottom part. I'm not going to go into the chocolate area. We're going to do a couple of layers here for the breading for this guy. So this, again, is a Hansa yellow that I've really diluted. I'm just putting in the base here for this. Oops. Okay. Great. So while that's drying, we will go into our pink and start doing our icing a little bit here. Another thing that we're going to be using tonight, and I can't remember if I told you, we will be using some white gouache again tonight. If you don't have white gouache, don't worry. You can also leave out portions that you want to paint a different color or you want them to be white. And I'm just going to take this brush and paint in the pink areas. I'm going to paint around my little sprinkles here so I can show you what it's like when you don't use Misket or something. Now if you have Misket and you want to use it, feel free to. For a lot of years I wouldn't use Frisket or Misket or whatever because I just painted around things. Now I have lately been using a little more white for paintings, and gouache is a good alternative. Also, you can use gel pens, white gel pens, and that works pretty good too. See, with this really fine point, I can go around some of these areas that are really hard to get into. And I'm not too worried about perfection here or marks in my icing because we're going to be layering this a bit. Sometimes when you're layering, you can fix things like marks. Okay, and I didn't put in a huge abundance of sprinkles up here, so I've got some pink area that I can add. It's kind of a slow process, so patience is good. But see, by painting this way as well, we can kind of see what we're painting as well. So we've got our base layers down, and then we can see where we can add to those. So I've got my pink in there. Some of it's a little darker in areas than others, but that's fine. I'm going to let that dry, and we are going to move back down here to the bottom of our donut. Shading really gives our artwork depth. And so here we've put down a base color, and then we can add to it, and it aids in making things look more realistic and gives them dimension and form. And I'm really a fan of this color here, this peachy bread color. If you don't have this color, that's okay. What I would suggest is mixing either an orange, or if you have a convenience orange, using that and just diluting it quite a bit with water. This is what I would call a convenience color because it's already mixed for us. So if you're new to the color wheel or new to painting, you could mix your red and your yellow together to get an orange. Okay, so I'm just going to start here using my reference image, using this image to put in this darker part of the donut base. And we may have to do a couple of swatches here to get this. You can also dab paint in along these darker edges. Starts kind of giving it form. Okay, so that's probably good for now. I'm going to let that dry and check my pink paint. Now's a good time for me to check in with you guys if you are painting along. How are you doing? So see, I just touched that, and my pink paint here is still a little bit wet. Kind of fix that there. So when you look at this image, because what makes frosting frosting are the different planes of the frosting. So as I'm looking at this, I'm going to be now looking at areas that are in shadow, like this area, versus areas that are in light. So we'll go in and paint a little bit of purple in these shadow areas to give it dimension and form now. And then you see we have some of these lines here, these separating lines and the frosting. So we'll be adding that. So as you're watching me paint, or if you're painting along, look at your image and really look to see where are those areas that are in shadow, and we'll paint those purple. Now I can mix my hot pink and my cobalt teal and get a purple. So I'm gonna dip into my cobalt here and mix it with my hot pink. You see how that makes a nice purple? And maybe I want it to be a little warmer or pinker, so I can mix in a little bit more of my pink. Okay, and I'm gonna dab this on my paper towel in case it's super dark, and we'll test it here. Not too bad. actually, where I can see where I need to readjust this line drawing. So I'm just going to draw with my paintbrush here and adjust. And you can do this too if you find that you're kind of off somewhere. And this brush is really nice because it's got that really tiny narrow tip where it can really fit in areas and create thin lines. So, and it helps in this stage because you can kind of see where you're at. Frosting is really easy to lose your way and kind of figure, you know, you're kind of figuring out where you are. So it helps to draw in these areas with paint so you can kind of discern what's happening where you're at. And in some areas, maybe you want to lighten an area. Let's talk about lifting. So I've dipped my brush into water. I'm tapping it. I'm going to move this, maybe you can see it in one of these frames. Tapping it, tapping off the excess. And then I'm going to scrub with this brush a little bit because I want this to be lighter. Then I take my paper towel and I just dab it. And as you can see, that lightens and lifts pretty well. So sometimes when we make mistakes, they are fixable in watercolor. Watercolor is less forgiving than other painting mediums, but you can still fix stuff in it. Okay, so I see where I had some kind of weird back washing here. So I'm just going to kind of move up this guy and try to find these edges. You might have to do more than one layer and wait till it's dry. But again, have fun. This is a good challenge for you if you don't want to draw sometimes. These are good challenges, so you can kind of push yourself to draw a little bit. And again, this is your cupcake, so you can go off grid and do your own thing. I know my nephew Andy, he's really creative and he likes to go off grid sometimes and explore things his way, and that's okay. We're just getting you started here. And this portion is probably the most time consuming of this painting process. And if you're curious about what I'm painting on, this is actually a Fabriano block. It's the perfect size. It's a 5x7 block for painting, and I'm using hot press paper, which is a smooth paper. It's not like your textured watercolor paper, which is cold press. This is a watercolor paper, but you know, you might think of your traditional hot press for paper. And the reason I like, or cold press, I'm sorry, the reason I like hot press paper is I feel like sometimes it's easier to mix things. and kind of smush them around. Okay. So while I'm going to let this dry, and I may come back to it and keep working that out, but I want to get my chocolate in there too, so I'm going to let the pink dry, which most of it's dry down on this edge. So I'm going to mix up this pretty brown color. And this is a brown that I made. It's kind of a purpley, I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of not, it's kind of a warm purpley chocolatey brown. And I really like it, if I do say so myself. I've really enjoyed kind of playing with making paint and learning the process of making paint, what goes into it. It's really fascinating, and I had zero interest in doing that until I discovered beam paints, and I just really got into them and into the whole process of making paint. Okay, so now I'm going to do the chocolate. Again, I'm using my skinny brush. I'm going to try to leave areas white that I'm going to paint a different color, or that I might want them to be white. So I have some sprinkles here, and I'm just going around them slowly. I don't want to move too slow because I don't want my paint to dry here. I want a nice even brown if I can get it. Just going around these now. Again, if you have Misket or Frisket, that is masking fluid. You can use it, and you don't have to do it the hard way like I am. And I'm just dragging the bead, getting more paint. Going around these edges. And we move the bead so we don't leave marks in our paint. Have a nice even color. Okay, so I'm going to try to drag this bead back in here because it will leave some marking here. It may not be helped, but we're going to go back in. I'm going to let this dry, and then we're going to go back in and darken and lighten some of these areas. So you're going to have an opportunity to lift some more and to do some layering here. Now let's see. I'm going to use a really tiny brush because while that's drying, I'm probably not going to want to work into the pink just yet. So we're going to work on the shadow of the donut. So you can see here, looking at your reference photo, we have a shadow here. We have some shadows here. These are cast shadows. So we can paint those in, and even if you wanted to, you could do this shadow that runs along here. So we'll do that. while that brown dries. Do you think it's starting to look like a donut? Is it making you hungry yet? So for this, this color, I'm going to use Sodalite, which is a Payne's Gray-esque color. And you can see in this camera, the palette cam, what that looks like. We're going to dilute it a little bit so it's not as intense. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. And I may change up my brushes a little bit here. So I have a number 3 brush, and I have this teeny tiny brush as well. And I love these. I would recommend you at least get one if you enjoy adding detail. So I guess we'll start with this one, and we'll kind of go along this edge here. You can make that line thicker by spreading out those bristles if you want, so we can do that right here. So I'm flattening that a little bit for this cast shadow, and then I'll go back in here and just run along the edge here. Because generally, unless you're at night, and even sometimes at night, you're dealing with shadows. So when you give something a shadow, you're making it look grounded, and you're making your painting more believable. So I'm just going to kind of go along this edge here, and then I'm going to grab this 3 and dip it in a little bit of water, and then I'm going to run along this edge, flatten that brush down a little bit, and come back around and give it a little bit of a shadow. We could even go along this edge. I don't know if my hand's steady enough here. Not super steady, but that's okay. Flatten out those bristles a little bit. I kind of darkened up a little bit. But we're using a real light color here. It's not too intense. We're not just filling it with a ton of paint. We want that to be kind of subtle. And if you want to build upon it, then you have the freedom to do that. You haven't made it too dark so that you can't fix it easily. Okay. So I have this color here that I also used in my other painting. It is Fall Sugar Maple by Beam. It's really just a lovely kind of rosy color. Well, that's not going to work there. You can kind of see that's just really light there. But it's a pretty little rose color, and in some of these areas that we're dealing with creases in our icing, we can add a darker line with a thin brush, or even if you have a brush like this, you can use that because it has a nice point on the end of it, and you can do that. Are you guys hanging in there with me? Okay, so I'm just going to run this along some areas here. To define some of these. And I'm going to use it in some of my sprinkles too. I'm going to run along this edge, kind of redraw that there. Just in these areas where I need a bit more of an edge. You could also use a dark purple since we've been using purple here. And along this guy. Okay. And you could continue adding purple for some shadows. I often work on my paintings and just continue to work on them here, but I don't want to lose your interest here, so I want to keep moving. So while I've got this color out, let's paint some of these sprinkles a little bit. And I'm just kind of following my own fancy here. You don't have to follow our reference image perfectly. Just going to put them in some random spots. Now you can see how beautiful this rose color is. It's very vibrant. It's a very vibrant pigment here. Sometimes with little brushes you have water that runs down the ferrule and it can make a little drop on your picture. And in order to kind of fix that, you can just keep dipping your brush in the water and it will suck up the extra water. And you can dab it on your paper towel or cloth. Oh, my computer, it's going kind of berserko tonight. Now a lot of times watercolor will dry lighter than it looks on the paper. I find there's a little bit of an exception to core watercolors made by Golden. They have really high pigmentation and they don't change too much. But most watercolors, they do dry lighter. Okay, so that's good for now. I'm going to move back into my chocolate, I think here. I'm going to mix a little bit more paint. So when I'm going back into this chocolate, the reason I'm doing that, and hopefully you can see this, but there are some darker areas of chocolate. There are areas that are being seen by light and have a little bit of light or reflection there. And this will help give us dimension when we're painting. So when you're looking at your reference, if you can't see a gradation, squint those eyes of yours and see if that will help determine the darker areas. It works pretty good, and it's often what an art teacher will recommend to you. So if you're having trouble discerning values, definitely give that a try. Okay. So I'm using this number 3 brush, and I'm going to go in here in the top part again. And around. And you can see on this edge, if you're looking at the reference, it's a little bit darker here. Now what do I do with this line? Well, I'm going to soften that a little bit. So I've dipped my brush in some water, and then I think it needs a little bit more. Just kind of soften that edge a little bit and just keep working my way around here. Observing where things get darker. And mostly that's what we're doing right now. We can pull out or leave out some areas. So there's this area here, this dent in the chocolate a little bit. Kind of go back in here. Of course, we have this area that's a little bit darker here anyway, where our paint kind of pooled. Donuts are really a great way to observe light and value and highlights. I'm gonna get a little more paint here. So this area is a little bit darker. Okay. So now it's starting to look a little bit more like a donut. So I'm going to let that dry, and then I think we can pull out some highlights, and I'll show you how to do that. Now we can go back into our pink frosting and add some color for our sprinkles. And you can use any color that you like. You can even use some of these colors that we've already mixed. And if you hear my cat Lucy, she's okay. She just wants in. Never met a more spoiled cat, unless that's our other cat. I think they hear me talking and they assume, hey, she's talking to us. So I'm putting in some of this bread color or an orangish color, apricot, just randomly picking little areas to drop this into. Now I'm going to dip into my my Cobalt Teal. Add some sprinkles there. What's great about this color is it's a little more opaque than other colors, and so that can be really nice sometimes. And as you can see, I have a really teeny tiny brush. I couldn't tell you what size this brush is. It's one of my standard go-tos, but maybe it is a 2, maybe a 1. Thank you, April. I appreciate that. I hope you're able to paint along with us tonight. And I appreciate you being here and popping in and saying hello. What color should I do next? It looks like we might need yellow. So I've got a little bit of green, it looks like on my brush here, but we'll use a little Hansa yellow here. Now we can see here my red or my orange color has seeped into my brown. Don't panic. We can fix it if we want to. Sometimes it's just a nice effect of watercolor when colors mix. Okay. Let us find a green. Now we'll use a little bit of sap green, and I'm just going to take that directly from my palette. Start adding this in. And there are a ton of sprinkles on here. So if you wanted to have more sprinkles, you could definitely add them and add more character here to this guy. You can also just draw it in with your brush. I got this a little too dark, so I'm going to lift a little color there. And you just kind of keep moving around different colors. That's awesome, Jan, right? That's what it's making me want some donuts too. And if you're in Pocatello, you know, there's a great place that's over by Fred Meyer. I think it's called Amazing Glaze. If this is giving you a hankering for them, they have some pretty good ones there. So I dipped into a little bit more of an orange color here for that guy. And I drew over one of my guys, so I'm just going to draw one in over here because we have the creative license to do so. Yeah, I mean, you know, really sometimes it's hard to find the motivation to paint or find things that are interesting to paint. Just don't forget the things that are around you that you see every day. Because sometimes that's all it takes is just getting a little motivation to paint anything, like your scissors, what have you. Okay, so I'm going to be lifting here in this brown area. And I'll go over that again because it's a great technique and I use it all the time. So what I do is I dip my brush in water. When you hear this, you know I've dipped my brush in water. And I've got quite a bit of water in there, but maybe I tap it a little on my paper towel. And then I run it in the area that I want to lighten and just scrub a little. This brown's really nice because it lifts really easily. And you can see how that starts making this donut have some dimension. I'm going to do some of that over here. And again, if you're just tuning in, the reference images for this particular lesson are down below in the description when you're looking at this through YouTube or your YouTube app on your phone. You can download them and paint them to your heart's desire. And if you want to trace this or approach this again, you can easily trace this donut so you don't have to draw it if you don't want to. So see how easily that lifts? That's awesome. And not all paints are easy to lift, but this one in particular is pretty easy to lift. Now we've got all of our elements here painted for the most part, and you could stop here. I'm gonna just continue painting here a little bit and continuing to add a little more depth to this. If you have questions for me, please go ahead and pop them down, or concerns, or if you have troubles with certain things when you're painting, pop it down in the comments in the chat there. I'm happy to try to help you find answers or answer any questions you might have. So you can see I'm layering here, and I love layering because it really gives you a lot of kind of freedom. You can continue to kind of get your values right and some little details there. And it has that great kind of watercolor texture feel. So I missed this spot. This is kind of where some chocolate got down below. And you can always kind of, with these little brushes, you know, if you need to give the icing a little shadow, you can do that. And I have this area that I can try to fix here. Kind of add a little more paint around that guy. I think he's dry. Makes him a little darker on the screen, but kind of move that around here. We have some dark here. So it's kind of a dance between your dark areas, darker areas, and your shadows. One of these days I'll do a drawing tutorial on here that uses value. I've done it a little bit in one of my drawing classes. But if you struggle sometimes with drawing, that can change everything for you sometimes. So see, and I can just kind of keep adding in these details. With this guy, you can tell that I really enjoyed working with the brown part of the paint. Okay. So I'm liking that. I'm pretty sure Lucy's going to try to break in here. I can see here that this is looking a little flat right here. And so I'm going to add a little bit more dimension to that. So when you look at your painting, do you see an area that's flat? You can always kind of keep working on it. And I have this yellow. I'm going to mix a little of my bread with my yellow here to make that a soft color, because we have a bit of a shadow here. I can dilute that with a little bit of water. So when you set up a photo shoot like this, like I did for this, I spray painted these wooden panels and painted them some colors that I liked that I thought would go with one another. And then I photographed them with a little bit of light or in an area where you have some light kind of shining in the room. And you can do your own fun still lifes. And just have fun with it. So here we're going to fill in any gaps that we might have. Or if you want to paint some white sprinkles here, you can do that too. This go around, I might just use some gouache to paint in those sprinkles. I could definitely go in and define my icing a little bit more and really play with those shadows some more. But for this evening, I'm probably going to leave that, and we'll go into the next phase where we're adding highlights. And this really is the icing on the donut, the highlights. They're probably my favorite part of doing anything watercolor related because they just add that sparkle. So I'm going to clean this guy up. And I'm going to show you the gouache that I'm using. If you don't have gouache, don't worry about it. This could be enough. Maybe you've lifted your color, but you can see kind of how it kind of really changes things a little bit in this image. But you can use a gel pen. You can use white ink. This is Winsor Newton designer gouache. I had this left over from a class that I took a few years ago, and this has been really good. I usually use a white watercolor kind of ink, but they dry up so fast in the bottle that this thing is, I don't know, 3 years old or more. And in the tube it stays nice and fresh. So that you can tell that's going to be opaque. You can re-wet this and make it continue to work. It operates like watercolor. I decided I like it out of the tube for things like this because it seems like it has a little bit more, it's a little more white. So I'm just dipping my brush in there, and you can see this is a pretty small brush. I don't know what size again, but maybe a 1 or a 2. And you can look at your image and kind of see where you've got some of these little sparkles hanging out. And I'm going to be working kind of gingerly with this because I have a big blob here at the end of my brush. But just where that light hits it. A lot of these are going to be in areas where we've lightened, maybe. Or wherever you want to add a little sparkle. I'm all about glitter and sparkle. You can even use this in this area, although it's not going to show up as well just because that's so light. But have fun with it. Add some highlights here wherever you like. So if you're tuning in here and you're a regular, or even if you're not a regular, if you have an idea for a class that you'd like me to do live, let me know in the comments, because I am all about your suggestions and love to help you paint something that you would enjoy. I mean, not everybody is like tuned into donuts, right? You can see I'm just adding some. This would be how you could add in some white sprinkles. Sometimes gouache will dry and it will be, it doesn't feel opaque, and you'll have to do multiple applications of it. You might just have to do multiple applications, but it's one of the reasons I like to use it fresh out of the tube, because it seems to work a little bit better. But don't be discouraged if you lay it down and it, isn't doing its job. Just add another layer and call her good. Now I can see here, there's an area here where I had paint overrun that I might want to lighten a little bit. So I'm just going to scrub this with water and lift it. So I'm always looking at this, kind of assessing, especially if I'm looking at an image kind of where there might be a shadow or something. And I can see there's like a little lip here. So I'm just going to mix for that lip, and then I'm just going to mix these two colors together because it's not like a really super dark shadow, but I want to kind of define that a little bit. And I had a little bit of overrun down here, so I can kind of move that color along. Just kind of go around and find your edges and such. And there you have it. You have a donut. It's pretty awesome. All right. So let's move into our screen and screen. Actually, let's move back up here. So as you can see, I have all my devices here to help me paint. So what questions do you have? I know we have a little bit of a delay here, but leave them down below in the comments for me, or you can do it after. If you watch this video later, feel free to leave them down below. There are a couple of things that I wanted to cover before I let you go tonight, so think of your questions. This week I released another video that was an acrylic painting video. If you're interested in painting masks or what that takes, the process that takes to do that, it's kind of fun to paint your own masks, and definitely should give it a try if you have to wear one and you're a creative person. I think it's fun to see what kind of masks people wear. So check that out. That's in my latest videos this week. Also, I want to say a big thank you to my Patreon subscribers. I need music for this part. A big thanks to Colin and Laurel, if my computer will work here. There we go. Thank you so much for, see my computer. Thank you so much for supporting this channel and enabling me to do these videos for you guys. I love doing them, and I love that you tune in and that you enjoy it too. Of course, Laurel and her family do this as a family, and I think that is the coolest thing ever. So I love that. And I'm reading Laurel's comments here in the chat. I'm glad that your donut looks kind of like a donut. I hope that you found this helpful, and you can kind of, donuts are hard. The icing's hard. But I wanted you guys to tackle this just because it's fun, and if you have a little success, you'll keep doing it. And so I'm glad that you enjoyed it and that you have a successful donut. Now, if we could just have a box of donuts here we could share, that would be awesome. What else do I have for you? That might be it. Now, if you are part of my Patreon community, I released a video today for you that covers a little more in depth, moving the bead and also doing gradients. So if you are so inclined, go ahead and check that video out when you have some free time, and I think it will be helpful for you. I use all this terminology and I'm used to using it, but it might be new to you. And if you ever are confused, please leave those comments down below. That helps me become a better teacher. So I don't have any other questions. I appreciate y'all being here, and I will see you next week, same time, same place. Thanks again. See you later. Oh, wrong screen. And I'm back because I see, Jan, you left me a message and I want to answer that because I can't log into chat. So a farmer's market scene would be great. Just produce would be fun for this time of year. Okay, I'll definitely take that into consideration, and when I'm planning our lesson this coming week, I will work on that. So look for something fun next week. Awesome. I love it. Give me suggestions, guys. I love it. So really, this time I am leaving. Have a good night, and I will see you next week.